Hello, it's Eli. This episode of Epic Confrontations was recorded and released during the 2023 WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes. We here at Epic Confrontations just want to reiterate that we fully support the unions in their strike, and without the labor and hard work of the writers and actors, none of the material that we're asking trivia questions would have existed. Yeah. Enjoy the episode. Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
This is episode 113 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. We are in our fourth episode of season 14. This, of course, covering Jedi Fallen Order. We are so excited to cover this part specifically because this is our first guest spot ever since we got back from our hiatus, and we're very excited. You might have been noticing that guest spots, I feel like, have been going down on In a Galaxy recently. I feel like that's because of the incredibly high time sink of Epic Confrontations for me. That is something I don't like personally, that we haven't had as many guests on here. So we're going to try and get more guests on. Obviously, as you know, we were going to have earlier in the season Alex Damon and Connor Chikiti on for the second episode of the season, but now we have pushed them to the end of this season, which is going to be not next week's episode, but the week after's episode. But that gave us the opportunity to get another guest in here, which, crazy enough to say, Jacob, it has been 3 years since we've had this person on Star Wars in a Galaxy.
It has been far too long.
It has been way too long. It is, of course, this person has been on AC. They've been on our live streams. Very good friend of us both. Good friend of the show. We have Mr. I heard some people have called him the Grayest Jedi, Jarod the Dark Jedi.
Very funny. Very, very funny. No, yeah, it's crazy that I've only been on like one actual episode of In a Galaxy.
It is absolutely like Jake and I were thinking about it the other day, and we said this on our last episode. We were like, how has it been 3 years? How have you only been on once?
I know I've been on a handful of live streams. Obviously, I am on a lot of EC, but I've only been on one actual episode of the podcast.
It doesn't quite do justice to the role that you've played in the development of our show, and you've been one of the most important figures, I think.
Absolutely.
For us coming into the scene. So welcome back. We're very excited to have you, especially for this segment of the Jedi Fallen Order story. I think is a pretty monumental segment. So we're very glad to have you here for this one in particular.
I was saying to Jacob last episode, I was like, I think this one's going to be the best chunk so far, and I proudly stand by that one. This one is so fantastic. But we'll get into all of our thoughts after I do a quick summary of what we watched. Cal reaches the top of the origin tree on Kashyyyk, where he is met by the Ninth Sister. They have an aggressive and heated duel, but Cal manages to gain an advantage over Masana Tide and force pushes her off of the origin tree, defeating his first Inquisitor.
What we all thought was her death.
We'll get to that. We will get to that and my feelings about that. Then Seer explains more of her backstory with Trilla, and Grease, we'll also get to this, pours a shit ton of salt on his food. Like, an absolute shit ton. Then Cal finally makes his first journey to the planet Dathomir, where he is walking around Dathomir looking for the final tomb of a Zepho sage named Kujet, when he runs into a Night Sister survivor of the massacre of the Night Sisters in the Clone Wars by General Grievous named Merrin. Merrin thinks that Cal seems to have some sort of Jedi hatred and sends her manipulated and brainwashed Night Brothers after Cal. While Cal's wandering around, he meets this random guy who warns him about the dangers of Dathomir. After Cal escapes the clutches of Merrin, he is not home free yet because he has to battle a gigantic Dathomiri pterodactyl named Gorgara, which he does by first dueling it inside a cave and then crashing its body down into a deserted Night Brother town. Then, of course, he manages to get inside the Dathomiri temple where Kuja's tomb is, and he has a flashback to where we see exactly how he survived Order 66 on the Star Destroyer Albedo Brave, where Jarod sacrifices his life to save Cal, and Jarod sacrifices his life to save Cal, and Cal mourns his master as he reaches into the dark side of the Force to use Force slow on the clone troopers and blast himself down in an escape pod, creating a lifelong trauma of his. And then he has a little bit of a spirit duel in some far away dimension that we'll talk about later. I have some theories as to what that might be, with his Force Master, the vision of his Force Master saying how disappointed he is in his apprentice, and his lightsaber, which formerly belonged to his master, breaking. And then it was revealed that random wanderer guy is actually removed shirt Terran Malicos, who is a Jedi who fell to the dark side, corrupted by the influence of Dathomir, and that he has been waging a proxy civil war against Merrin ever since. So Cal escapes all that fucking chaos, including Merrin unleashing Night Sister zombies against him and Malicos. Malicos because he manipulated her, and Cal because he's just kind of there. And he manages to escape onto the Mantis, where Seer announces that the next place they're going is to go to Ilum to build Cal a new lightsaber to replace his broken one. Quite a bit happens on this one. Really, the highlight is Dathomir 1, but we are first to Dathomir. But what I think we really got to talk about first is that fight with the Night Sister. I think Jared specifically wanted me, and I think I did good with this one.
Yes, you did.
To get as much lightsaber action in this part as possible, and starting off with probably the most intense duel of this game. I think
it's up there. It's definitely up there. I actually want to roll it back a little bit in the gameplay movie you guys are using for this.
Yeah,
I think it's really interesting that most people, to my knowledge, do not unlock the saber staff until right before they fight the Ninth Sister, which is, in my opinion, the lamest place to pick up that upgrade.
Because you think of it as Dathomir.
No, it's Bogano. Bogano is the best one because it comes with actual lore and story beats and a part that you unlock only by doing it there. To anybody who is unaware, on Bogano, you can unlock the saber staff. I think you have to go to Zepho 1 first. There's at least a force power or two you need to unlock to do it successfully. But once you get into Eno Cordova's abandoned workshop, there's a upgrade bench where you can work on stuff. I believe you unlock the Eno Cordova sleeve, or one of Eno's parts you unlock, and then Cal is talking about even though I've never met the guy, I feel like I know him so well at this point. And to me, I feel like that should be the canon place where Cal gets his saber staff, because to me, I've always found the idea that Cal, that his lightsaber is 1/3 Jarod T'Pol, 1/3 Eno Cordova, and then by the end of his journey, 1/3 Ser Junda. And I don't know. That to me is just the most satisfying place to get it.
Yeah, you make a good point.
Sense.
We've been talking about Gamers Little Playground, the order in which they do things, and I've been pretty positive towards it all the way so far. That's going to end today because there is this weird, because mostly they've been doing things like I think you should do, which is while playing this game, which is save Dathomir for as later as you possibly can.
Yeah.
I just think it fits better structurally within the story. But then there is that awkward line that says right at the beginning, no need to return to Dathomir. I'm like, return? We've never gone the first time.
Well, I think he's talking about himself.
Okay.
I think that he personally has no need to return to Dathomir because, like, oh, good, like, now I have my stuff. I don't have to go back to that hellhole. Which is where I think that's coming from.
It does, yeah. I guess it was just a little. I thought maybe that it was referring to the travel, whoever his traveler was like whoever would pick up BD1 and continue his quest. But yeah, it could be him too.
That's how I always interpreted that. But
yeah, it was. But yeah, we get to this duel. We get to this duel with the Ninth Sister, which, Jarod, actually, I was gonna ask you about this just in general, and this absolutely when you're not guesting on here, if you feel like it, and we get to a lightsaber duel that you specifically like, or because I know that you live and breathe lightsaber forms of combat, analyzing characters and stuff like that. So I was gonna ask you on this episode, but on any future episode, if you want to send us in, if you want to do a quick duel analysis of what you think of this duel from a lightsaber duel perspective.
I really do like this fight. One of the things I like about it, and one of the things I like about Cal a lot, is the way that the Star Wars Jedi franchise has gamified the Force in the best way possible, and has created a lot of fun little implied lore nuggets. So for me, for example, I've always thought it's interesting that you rarely see, gee, I wonder why people complain about Cal's proficiency in combat in the same disdain that they talk about, say, Rey or Sabine, Reva, etc., etc., etc. When you're dealing with people who have actually been like fighting their whole life in some capacity. I think what's interesting with Cal, aside from like the inherent misogyny of him not catching flack for this, I think there's a really fun in-universe explanation for why Cal is so remarkably good with a lightsaber. And I do think it's his psychometry. I think that it's really cool, at least to me, that I've always interpreted that Cal is able to use his master's lightsaber and then forge it into a saber staff so competently because he is fighting like Jarod T'Pol. And if you look at the way that Jarod fights in the Order 66 flashback, and then you look at the way Cal uses the saber staff, it's a lot of those same like really big, wide twirls and stuff.
Yeah.
And that he is inheriting muscle memory from Jarod T'Pol, and it's part of why I like the Eno Cordova thing as well, is that now that he has a part of Eno's lightsaber, he is also inheriting Eno's muscle memory, and he inherits Trilla's and later Seer's, that I think makes him into this really fascinating combatant that kind of puts him further along than somebody who was 14 when the Order was burned to the ground and was like still like very much an initiate level Padawan. So he makes up for that in some really interesting ways. Whether it's intentional, sorry, Naya got angry at the mailman. She's reinforcing negative stereotypes about dogs and male people. But Cal being able to, kind of rely on that muscle memory, it puts him leagues ahead of where he should be. It also, I think, in my opinion, entrenches his connection to his official and unofficial masters throughout his journey. And I think it's a really fun juxtaposition when you set him up against the Ninth Sister, who is this product of the fall of the Order, who, her entire worldview and fighting style is based on, crushing her enemy. It's all that classic dark side stuff. But especially when you get to that dialogue she has at the end of the fight where she's talking about, watching the Order be destroyed. I feel that anger in you. Will break you. Blah. All again, something dark side bullshit. It makes for a very interesting thematic conflict between them, where just before you even look at like the fight itself, the fact that you have Masanda Tide, who is so entrenched in the dark side, who is so very much a product of the Purge, in the way that she fights, in her viciousness, in her brutality, in the way that her humanity has been completely sucked out of her by the Inquisitorius and by the Empire at large, that to pit her up against another product of the Purge in Cal Kestis, and the way that he is the legacy of the Order in many ways, that he is this like walking embodiment of several masters, all kind of boiled into one kind of scrappy Jedi who shouldn't be doing as well as he is. But Cal Kestis is built different.
He is built different. I will say that specifically one of the things that you brought up that I think is true and I love about this game specifically is that Cal is like if you, at least for me, if you ask me where his deficiencies lie in this game specifically, it is more with the Force. It is more with the Force, and but he's able to cover for that by being so damn good with a lightsaber.
Yeah. And if you look at Survivor, and again, like
I was gonna just say, like Survivor, he goes God mode.
But you see him integrate his Force abilities into, you know, his sword play a lot better in Survivor. And again, like when you're doing like versus stuff, and subscribe to the Nerd Academy podcast Patreon, $5 tier versus series. You got 2 episodes dropping this week. You know that there's you kind of have to rely on cutscenes, because you know, like at no point, and this is why I miss the novelization of video games, because like you get a canon, this is what he used. The canon, this is what he was doing. Canon, this is what was happening. And you know, maybe that's just part of my brain that is still a little canon obsessed and will always be. But you know, you see Cal like integrate his Force abilities a lot better, you know, in the 5 years since these first encounters he has back as a capital J Jedi. I just think it's really fascinating. Now getting into like the combat stuff, something I love about the Inquisitorius is that, and again, this has never been stated in canon, it's just an observation I've made. I love the fact that every single member of the Inquisitorius uses, except for Riva kind of, which again is a fun thematic thing, seems like they are funneled to use either Form 2 or Form 5. Which are the basic building blocks of Darth Vader's fighting style. It's also the Form 2 is also the third form of the Grand Inquisitor. So, you know, is that a product of Vader and the Grand Inquisitor, like training them in one or the other practices? Is it because those forms are dedicated to lightsaber combat? Is it because, you know, it's the Grand Inquisitor and Vader baking weaknesses into their students? Like, what's the name of the Blade Master from the Darth Bane trilogy? Is it Kassim?
Kassim.
Yeah, Kassim. Yeah.
Yeah, the same way Kassim like basically trained all of his students to not be able to deal with
This guy.
with Jar-Kai. You know, I think there's a similar thing here where Vader's like, okay, if I teach them all, if I force all of them to use, if I force half of them to use Makashi, me being just so overwhelmingly strong means that I will be able to shatter their defenses. And if they use Form 5, well, I'm stronger than them. And, you know, you can count on one hand the amount of people who could like straight up overpower Darth Vader. So I think there's something to that I find interesting. And Masana Tide is just this horrifying realization of how potent Form 5 can be when you have you again, like, and it's one of those things like you got to play to your strengths. Masana Tide is built like a brick shithouse. So the Ninth Sister is going to use a strength-based fighting style where she can just level you with these huge power blows. And I don't think it's an accident that, again, a lot of the time in the cutscenes, you see Cal either just straight up evading her or trying to parry her. There's never you see very rare moments of Cal just straight up blocking her. And again, I think is a testament to Cal's ability that he's able to disable her in a blade lock and kind of like shimmy around and take off her hand.
It's a testament as well that those moments are so shocking and surprising.
Yeah,
both for the Ninth Sister's character and for Cal's character, where you're like, holy
I
shit, Cal's standing up right now. Holy moly, what's happening?
I was gonna say that look on Cal's face, I think, is maybe one of the best like visual moments of this game, because he is as shocked as we are.
Yeah,
he is as surprised that he survived this as we are.
Oh, because let me tell you, the first time I played this game back in November of 2019, like whenever you cut off the Ninth Sister's hand, and she just like falls into a new stance, almost cradling her lightsaber. The slew of expletives that came out of my mouth when I was like, this bitch won't fucking die. And I was like, she's about to have another health bar. You got to be shitting me. And, you know, thankfully Cal does this cool thing where he kind of like slashes her across the back and boom through the origin tree. But yeah, no, I do think it's really interesting. And again, I think that Cal is able to rely on Jarod Tapal's fighting style and Eno Cordova. Again, we really don't know how Eno Cordova would fight. I do think it is because he has the inherited muscle memory of 2 Jedi masters that helps set him apart. I just think it's a fun thing. It's never been acknowledged in canon. It's never been like directly addressed. But until somebody at Lucasfilm directly tells me that I'm wrong, that is 100% how I interpret Cal's fighting style. And the Survivor, he builds on that by like having 5 years to add his own elements to it.
And become God mode.
It become this, you know, just machine, this fucking machine.
That was, I think, another thing I was just thinking about is like, I don't think any of us, I remember you and I talked about this, Jared. I don't really think any of us expected Cal to be as powerful as he was in Survivor. Like, holy shit, this guy is so powerful now.
Yeah, he's incredibly talented, you know. Like, I do love, not to get too ahead of ourselves and talk about Survivor too much, but like, I do really love the way, and again, it's one of the things I love about Star Wars and why I love so much talking about combat in Star Wars, because the character's fighting style is so it says so much about their character and says so much about who they are and how they operate and how that informs their characterization. It is in many ways a distillation of why I think the lightsaber is the greatest weapon in all of fiction, because you can look at a character's lightsaber hilt and go, oh, this is everything you need to know about this character distilled into this piece of machinery. You know, like Kylo Ren, look at him. He is like you look at Kylo Ren's lightsaber, that is who he is as a character. He has forced, no pun intended, he is like, you know, forced the trappings of darkness onto this like gleaming silver hero's weapon, and in doing so he's shattered it. The kyber crystal is shattered, it's falling apart at the seams. And it's because it is being something that it was never designed to be. He is pulled to the light because he is not Kylo Ren, he is Ben Solo. He's forcing the facade of Kylo Ren onto himself, and similarly onto his lightsaber. And same thing with Cal Kestis, where you have, again, at the very least, the canon version of his sword at the end of the game is half Jarod Tapal, half Ser Junda, with, again, I think canonically part Eno Cordova as well, where he is the sum of the parts of these masters. So yeah, Star Wars rules.
Yeah, I love this fight specifically because, building off a lot of what Jared was saying, is this idea about, like, you know, these duels between Trilla and Cal, which I love. Freaking the one on Zepho. The one on Zepho is fantastic. The one on Bogano is fine, honestly, and the one on Nur is fantastic too. They're built on the emotions. They're built on the emotionality. They're built on Cal and Trilla's relationship to each other. Ninth doesn't have that relationship to Cal. And like, it's almost like, here's the thing that's weird to me. I don't like Ninth as a character, but I don't feel like you really need to like Ninth for this duel to work. I think that's kind of the point, where Ninth is just like Ninth is like such an avatar of the Inquisitorius and the dark side, and so that and she is such like a representation of all of the strengths and mostly weaknesses of the dark side. And and she's like, she is this brick wall, and it's hard to break through a brick wall, but it's not impossible.
No, it's not. And the thing that juxtaposes Cal and Trilla, or Cal and Ninth Sister so well, is that while the Ninth Sister is, again, this like almost indomitable force who's just wailing on you this whole fight, you know, it is Cal's like, not that Cal's like a precision fighter. He's not like a Count Dooku or a Porter Angle or anything like that. But like, but his comparative and spiritual precision, that's how you break through a brick wall, is you focus on one spot and you just beat the shit out of that spot.
Yeah.
And then eventually you will pierce it. And that's what Cal does with Ninth Sister.
Yeah. I think,
and I do think it's funny, Eli, that you say that it's the most intense fight, because maybe it's just the ambiance of where the final battle with Trilla takes place in Fortress Inquisitorius, which let's just all take a moment and appreciate that name. Let's just all take a moment and appreciate. I cheered for that name when it popped up on the screen for the first time. I was like, oh, it's just so fun to say. It's just it's just fun. It's fun. But but for me, it's the final battle with Trilla. But when I replay the game, oh man, do I love going toe to toe with Ninth Sister.
Yeah. I'm not saying like the most intense fight in terms of like the emotional stuff. I'm saying in terms of the actual swordplay.
Yeah.
I think Ninth Sister and Cal is probably the most intense of the game. Who knows? Yeah. We'll get to Trilla and Cal and Ner. We'll see where that goes next episode. But specifically with Ner, I remember just Cal and Trilla just kind of wailing on each other. Like, there's no it's not like they're like just kind of like, okay, we fought twice already this game. Let's just freaking get this over with.
But that is one of the things I love about Cal, is that he's able to overcome the Ninth Sister because of her imbalance. And Cal is like finally getting his groove back. And then like I think in that fight with the Ninth Sister is the first time he's like fully considering himself a Jedi again. And you juxtapose that with his fight against Trilla, where he's fighting somebody that just spiritually being able to center yourself isn't enough. And I love the fact that it takes Cal several tries to be able to beat her, because he's finally figured out like what her Achilles heel is. Like, he beats her on Bogano, and then she does some fuckery to slither out of it. But like that fight on Fortress Inquisitorius, they're both giving it their all. And Cal comes prepared with the fact that he knows how to fight her now. And he knows that he knows how he was able to beat her on Bogano, and is able to bring that to bear in their final confrontation on Ner. But yeah, no, the fight is incredible. It's also just this great, the whole idea of the oppressive technological monstrosity of the Empire being brought low by nature. You have that location, I think, does again represent that Cal is so attuned with the light side, wanton animal murder aside, a little narrative dissonance.
Well, also, I will say that I was just thinking about this, because remember how offended Cal gets when he thinks that Trilla shot his bird down, when Masana shot his bird down, which I was teasing to Jacob last episode. And by the way, Jacob, I was right. Nothing bad happened to that bird. Nothing bad happened to the bird. But also, Cal, are you really going to shame somebody for killing animals? Is that what I'm hearing right now?
Yeah, I mean, again, you can make the defense that that big ass bird is not actively attacking him the way that the other animals are. Like he is fighting like spiders that are trying to eat him. But
yes, no, I'm
but
not.
Also,
I'm not
that's not. I know, but it's also not a pass for like you could probably leave the Skazes alone. They probably aren't that much of a threat.
If PETA was in Star Wars, Cal would be PETA's public enemy number one.
Oh,
we could just leave it there.
Yeah.
Space PETA has no love for Cal Kestis.
Nope.
He's taken all comers. Another thing that I wanted to bring up about the duel, more in terms of the emotional and personal exchange that I found interesting, was the way that the Ninth Sister expressed herself and her story in this duel. I think that this is something that we've seen more in Jedi in the Jedi Fallen Order and in Jedi Survivor than anywhere else, where we see Darksiders kind of wearing more on their sleeve the pain and the humiliation and the brokenness of falling and turning to the dark side, and not kind of, Kylo Ren, for example, in episode 7, talking about it as, oh, I destroyed Ben Solo, he doesn't exist anymore. Other characters, having, talking about it as a great awakening or an ascension, or this is the real me.
It. There's no bravado. There's no chest thumping. It's, we're going to break you just like I'm broken.
And I think that maybe that speaks to how, maybe the Inquisitors, they're not real Sith. Maybe they're kind of holding on to a shell of the power that real Sith experience. But I was interested to see what you guys thought of that, because it seemed to me that this exchange kind of was the foremost example of the way that it's talked about, which feels very different in Jedi Fallen Order than in most other Star Wars stories.
No, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think it is one of those beats that makes, well, again, not to get too into Survivor, and this will kind of dovetail into Eli's feelings about Ninth Sister surviving her defeat on Kashyyyk. It's one of the reasons why when you face her again on Coruscant that I love that moment so much, is that you're looking at somebody who is like, it's almost like in like a zombie, like a piece of zombie media, where like you see your loved one who's like fully become afflicted by whatever the plague is, and it's like you look like them, but like you're not that person anymore.
Yeah.
And that the person who is in whose shell is being piloted right now by the undead is not my loved one. You are a different being, basically, entirely. And a similar thing I think could be said of Trilla here, or fucking of Masana Tide here, where she has fully given herself over to the dark side, but not in the way that we typically see from like our, card carrying Sith Lords. There is a like she is just at a point where she can do nothing but lament her fall and wants nothing more than to inflict that darkness upon other people. And for me, that resignation to the dark side is what makes her return in Survivor so much potent for me. Is that, it's that amazing line of dialogue from Cal that is just still might be my favorite moment from Survivor. With that, like, your name was Masana Tide, it's time to set you free.
Yeah.
That beat, like, he is recognizing you do not want to be better. Like, again, flash forward a little bit with Trilla. In those final moments, you're seeing somebody who, like the Ninth Sister, thought she had nothing else. And It is not until it is too late for Trilla does she go, there is more. Had I laid my sword down sooner, had I been willing to maybe make recompense and hear Seer's apology, it wouldn't be over for me. But by the time she hears those heavy footsteps and she hears that breathing, she knows she's dead.
Yeah.
She knows she's a dead woman walking. That, there is no version of that for the Ninth Sister. There is no version of, let me try to disarm you so I can try to de-escalate the situation. There is no de-escalation with her.
No, she's going to fight until she dies.
Yeah. And because it's all she has is fighting and destroying and lashing out at people who share her trauma. It is the truly the darkest element of the Inquisitorius is that they found all of the right Jedi who would rather lash out at people they know feel their pain to feel more powerful than like really sit with that trauma.
Yeah.
And it's why Cal pities her at the end. It's why Cal verbalizes that he's going to set her free from like being bound by hatred and bound by anger and resentment. I think it makes for a very fascinating, beautiful character study from somebody who again like does not have a whole lot on the fucking page. Like I think that's like that she is, as you said, Jacob, this embodiment of the negative impact of the dark side. It is truly wonderful. Like you could like. I mean, we've done it now. We're what, almost 40 minutes in, and we're like still just talking about the Ninth Sister. That despite there not being a whole lot to mine from just what's on the page, all of the subtext of who she is, where she's been, and the grander context of this era in Star Wars makes her deeply, deeply fascinating.
I think it's an infinitely fascinating topic. Clearly, I think that, oh gosh, I lost my place in my notes here, but I think that also, the Ninth Sister kind of embodies this idea that I was talking about a little bit last episode, but which is, you know, if you, and this is, it resonates with me the most, you know, in real life as well, you know, like, for example, you know, Jarod, you know, J6, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, if you keep on digging your hole deeper and deeper, you're never going to have to look up and look at the people looking down at you from the hole. And that's what the Inquisitors are, you know, they're the Jedi who have been through such horrible experiences and are living with having committed such atrocities that they'd rather keep going down their path than make almost the more difficult choice, which is to actually truly reckon.
Yeah. In the words of the great American poet Kendrick Lamar, hurt people, fuck calling it culture.
Yep.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I was going to say, and here's my time to go on like a very, very small rant for me. And I know Jarod doesn't agree, and that's
not at all. You're dead wrong.
This should have been the end of the road for Masonatide.
Nope.
It should have been the end of the road for Masonatide.
Okay, why? Explain.
Because I don't feel like there's a lot, like, I think there's some really great character beats that happen in Jedi Survivor, but not enough to justify. I think that justify removing the weight of this moment, which is, I think that Cal, and I will say, upon rewatching, I did notice how eager they were to never say the word kill. In this, it does kind of feel like they were kind of trying to keep their options open.
They kind of had a feeling they might bring her back for one last
or
fight.
at least that they wanted to keep their options open, that they thought it was something they might do.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if it weren't for how wonderful that send-off was that she gets in Survivor, you know, again, it's time to set you free. Like, I had to pause. I was up at midnight playing that game. I was on this adrenaline rush playing it. I was so excited. He hit that shit. I had to put the controller down and just kind of like take a lap around the living room. Because I was like, holy shit. That was the coldest, but like not like cold-blooded, but like just ice cold stone shit I've ever heard in my fucking life.
Yeah. I will say
but if it weren't for that, like, I honestly would have been like, no, I want Masana to survive that. I want her to just be this jobber who shows up in every Jedi game that you got to throw down with. I want her to fuck Ogdo Bogdo. Give me Masana Tide.
I will say that I think that as much as I've talked about loving Survivor, and I do, and I think it is, like, at least it's a Star Wars story that connects to me a whole lot more than Fallen Order for a bunch of reasons. The Coruscant section of that, the Coruscant intro of that game is something that I've always kind of struggled with ever since the game came out, where I feel like there's a lot of, and Masana's with that, where, like, I feel like it means more if Cal kills her. I feel like it means more if Cal, if like, in the same way that when Kanan killed Grandy at the end of season 1 of Rebels, that it was a statement, that it was a, oh shit, he just killed the boss of all the Inquisitors. As this would be other than, you know, that one fucking chicken beak helmet one that Ahsoka killed in Tales of the Jedi, this would be one of the first Inquisitor kills. And I guess also 10th brother in the comics, but still. This would be one of the first major Inquisitor kills. And, like, just the idea that the Empire would be like, oh no, it's been 5 years and we think we've gotten all the Jedi, but this one Padawan just sliced our brute.
I don't know. I kind of disagree. I think it's a very different situation, obviously, than Kanan and the Grand Inquisitor at the end of season 1 of Rebels. I think that at this point in the story, I don't think that the story has done enough, and I don't think that Cal would have done enough to really earn that statement moment of actually killing the ninth sister. I don't think that, given where he goes as a character, you know, how he reacts to the whole thing, I don't think I don't really think that it would feel right for him to have that kind of moment at this point in the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also think that like what you're saying with that big grand statement that you get, using Kanan defeating the Grand Inquisitor as an example, I think that the moment he has when he kills her on Coruscant is that it is that big statement, because it's such an amazing demonstration of where Cal is at as a Jedi at this point in time. And again, your opinion's valid, and I know that a good bit of it is also like, just let people stay fucking dead in Star Wars.
That's the other thing.
Yeah, that was a good point. I agree with you on that.
And I'll hear you on that. I'll hear you on that. Like, no contest for sure. But the gravity of the "I will set you free" and how that shows that like that Cal has, I don't want to say that he's straying from the path of the Jedi. You know, obviously, like, he has become such a warrior that like he's like macro dosed on the battlefield decay of the Jedi of the Clone Wars in the 5 years he spent as like a guerrilla fighter. You know, like, again, he's my baby little brickin' Nazis Jedi. You know, like it is part of his journey is that he is putting too much stock in the fighting part and not in the what comes next part. But you know, I do think the Masana Tide beat is a big part of that. But again, I understand where you're coming from, man. I totally get that.
I think as well.
Go ahead.
I think I understand as well that, you know, I think the severing the hand was enough. I don't think the quote unquote killing of Masana on Kashyyyk was really necessary. I'm with you there. I think that could have been done away with completely, because Cal still absolutely could have felt like he defeated her had he simply, you know, disarmed her and then ran away or something like that. And that might even be more in line with his character at this point in the story, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I there's also a lot, and I'm not going to say it now because I want to save it for when we actually do cover Survivor, about the context in which she was brought back specifically that I'm not in love with. Like, if they brought her back, that'd be annoying, but the way they brought her back for me just doesn't really work. Also, the fact that she's a double-bladed lightsaber wielding person who really just looks cool for our opponents to have, for our heroes to have a big fight, and oh wait, she's the Darth Maul of Jedi Fallen Order. And,
all right, let's not invoke Maul, because that's going to open a whole can of worms, and we have a whole ass other planet and the flashback to get through.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
by the way, speaking of Maul, the planet that he does not appear on, but many, including myself, were thinking as soon as we hit Dathomir, we're like, oh, could we? But we didn't. We have instead a whole ass fucking soap opera on Dathomir, as I like to call it. First of all, before we get to Dathomir, I just want to quickly reference this because one of my favorite parts of this game, how they tortured me and they showed me what Trilla has become, and she was an Inquisitor. Meanwhile, Grease.
Salt that shit.
Yeah.
Just poured the entire fucking shaker. And like the dedication.
And it has the audacity to be like, get your lasers out of my lunch. Wow. And it's like, motherfucker, BD1 is just going type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes.
And no, the part that's really funny to me is that I always thought when I was playing the game for the first time, I had like a false memory where I thought it was just that he was holding it in a certain way that looked like he was pouring it. No, that motherfucker was shaking it the entire time. They had to animate that in. They knew what they were doing.
I mean, that's what I love about Grease. You know, he's so freaked out by everything that has kind of fallen into his lap that he will do anything to not get caught in the crossfire in any way he can. Even if that means just salting his lunch to hell and back, just to not avoid changing his motion to draw any attention to himself, you know? And it's hilarious. And that's why I love Grease as well, because with that being said, simultaneously, he frequently just has no idea He frequently just has no idea or just does not give even the slightest little shit about the momentousness of anything that he's witnessing in any of this.
It's something that I do love about Grease as a character is that for him, you know, he cares so deeply for his found family on the Mantis, but like cannot be bothered with this space wizard bullshit. Like he cares about how it affects Seer and Cal and later Merrin, but like could not give a fuck.
Yeah, he does not.
Refuses to give half a fuck. Like he's like, I care that it affects you. I care that it affects you. I will hug you. I will tell you that I love you. I will protect you to my dying breath. But I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and frankly, I don't want to.
I don't care. Yeah,
it is a very endearing beat for him. You know, you think of like all of the characters in Star Wars who are thrust into a litany of space wizard bullshit, like your Han Solos, your Harrison Dulles, like all of them. Like eventually, like they become invested in this shit despite what they wanted in the fucking beginning. Grease is at a constant level of fuck this shit. I love you. I will do anything to protect you. I am here if you need to speak. But like, Ahala, what's it? Yeah. What am I doing? Why?
And like it's like with Zeb, where there was a moment with Zeb where in Rebels where he goes, "It's good when it gets weird like this." He doesn't even do that. He's like, "No, just keep me away from all."
Yeah, of it. Yeah. Zeb's like this passive observer who's like, "Oh, cool, space wizard bullshit. I'm in. Cool. Like, I'm gonna teleport with fucking wolves based." But for
also like
no.
For Grease, nah. I'm not gonna get involved. I'm gonna get involved.
Also like
you said Inquisitor, you said Jedi. I'm out. Sorry, Jacob. What?
Zeb also completely pulled one over on the seventh sister and the fifth brother. Like he completely outsmarted them.
Oh yeah.
Which episode was it? Always two there.
Always two there are.
He parks the Phantom on the freaking ceiling and somehow gets Ezra and Sabine out alive. So I mean,
I remember that one
Zeb
specifically because I made a hyperspace question out of that one in one of the final rounds. But yeah, let's go to to Dathomir, which I had been thinking for a long time. I've always thought of Jedi Fallen Order as a relatively safe Star Wars video game. Like this was their first big story Star Wars video game that didn't have a multiplayer and stuff like that. So I always thought, because they wanted to, figure like make sure this one sold well, they wanted to keep a pretty safe story side. And I agree mostly with that upon rewatching it. Dathomir is not safe. Dathomir, like everything on Dathomir, that is some of the wackiest shit ever. And I don't think I realized it because the other stuff with Zepho and with Bogano and with Kashyyyk especially felt very like, okay, we're gonna tread somewhat familiar territory, but open up new avenues instead of like paving completely new ground. Dathomir, even though we know about Dathomir, we got a whole lot of world building for this place that I loved. And Dathomir has always been my favorite planet in this game, and it hasn't changed. Seer, of course, says before then, Dathomir is a deadly place. I believe that Dathomir is the hardest planet, gameplay-wise, in either Jedi game.
I'm trying to think as to whether or not I disagree with you. In terms of the fact that like this planet just does not give a half a fuck about your feelings, yes. In terms of traversal, I personally have a hard time on Kashyyyk getting around. I
was specifically talking about combat-wise.
Combat by sheer volume, absolutely. By sheer volume, yes.
I cannot tell you the number of times in that deserted village where I've been surrounded by like 10 Night Brothers.
Well,
and it's just like, I'm screwed.
I will say the thing that I like about Dathomir upon replay is that I really like how much it pushes me to become familiar with changing my stance in this game. That like there are certain opponents that are going to be worlds easier going with like the strong style single blade, and there are opponents that are infinitely easier whenever you just like start throwing your saber staff around. Like those AoE attacks with the saber staff are a lifesaver when you're surrounded by zombies. But they are, but like when you're going up against like a bunch of like Night Brother brutes who are coming at you with those axes, well, I want to be able to like I want to be able to parry and deal one big hit of damage at a time. But yeah, no, I do. I can hear that. I would argue that maybe Fortress Inquisitorius is more difficult combat wise, only because there are moments where it's like 2 or 3 different classes of purge trooper mixed with a bunch of basic infantry, and that is a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
Doable, but a pain in the ass. But no, but that you can argue, make it very solid argument for Dathomir.
Yeah, because and don't get me wrong, Survivor is difficult, but I think it's about consistency. I think it's about I think nothing is as consistently difficult as Dathomir is. But then we get our introduction to one of our basically our last introduction to a main character in this game, Night Sister Merrin. And I love the fact specifically that
Magic Russian mommy.
Yeah, that I do like the
Mother Dathomir.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking I was just thinking earlier, like in Soviet Dathomir, fight Night Sisters fight you.
My mother was a Nidak.
But I love the fact specifically that Merrin does not start out good. Like that Merrin starts out like I remember specifically probably the 15 minutes after I met her, I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have to fight a Night Sister in this game. This is gonna be horrible. I am so scared about this. But the fact that they turned her, the fact that she turned, is a really fantastic choice that I think expands. Again, the let's get ready to pay some to give some royalties out. That expands the tapestry of Star Wars. The idea, the places Star Wars is able to go with its characters and its themes, incredibly huge. I think it expands it so much.
Well, it's also a fun mirror to Ninth Sister, where Ninth Sister is so rooted in this refusal to listen, refusal to let her guard down, and accept that what she's doing is motivated by grief and rage. That when you juxtapose that with, Merrin, that, it is this grief, it is this rage, it is this caustic mourning that she's experiencing, that she is able to go, wait a minute. If Malicos lied to me about how my people were killed, what else is he lying about?
Yeah.
That she's able to have that. She's able to have that realization that maybe she's walking a path that is not one she would have chosen for herself. The same way that Trilla has the same realization way too late, and by the time she realizes it, she's in the same room as Darth Vader. And then I really do like that about Merrin. And again, I love another thing I love about the dynamics between Cal and Merrin is that, and Seer as well, is that at no point do Seer or Cal try to impose a more Jedi-like philosophy onto her. They try to be like, hey, you anger and hatred will undo you and they will eat you up inside. At no point do they ever go, hey, you're kind of inherently using the dark side. We're not about that.
She comes to that realization on her own. And I haven't read Battle Scars, but that is what I understand that happens in that book. That she comes to the realization of how to use the light side with her Night Sister magics on her own. What was I gonna say? Yeah, that she realizes how to use the Night Sister magics for on the light side on her own, which I really like. Also, just like the idea that I really like this because we've seen these now parallel purges. We've seen, of course, the Jedi purge, which. Regardless of what you feel about the Jedi were acting the Jedi were good actors in the galaxy overall. Regardless of how bad they were, this is an inherently good order that is falling. The Night Sisters not so much. So it's interesting to deal with, a more morally dubious order falling. and seeing how members are going to react to that instead of
More
just
morally
false
dubious. I also think that it's interesting to when you look at how the Night Sisters fall. You know, that it is that not only is it more morally dubious than the Jedi Order, I think there's also something interesting in the fact that, like, what happens to the Night Sisters and the place that the Night Sisters are in, much like the Jedi, like, there's also a question of, like, well, what the fuck was going on in the leadership? You know, like Mother Talzin was happily playing both sides of the war. You know, like, Mother Talzin was welcoming, you know, Count Dooku to her world so that she could then sick Ventress and Savage on him, but also, like, had no love for the Jedi and would happily watch the Jedi, you know, burn. So I think that's also an interesting factor, just because, you know, as Star Wars in the modern era has tried so hard to make clear, you know, the cultures, you know, science fiction, which I know pretty much everybody on the screen would classify Star Wars as more space fantasy than science fiction, that it's more a fairy tale in space than it is like a, you know, prescriptive future like Star Trek or something like that. That Star Wars has done a really good job as of late avoiding the sci-fi pitfall of painting alien cultures as monolithic.
Yeah.
You know, congratulations, guys. We've reached the part of the show where I start making plugs for Knowledge Fight. You know, Knowledge Fight, there's a series of episodes where Knowledge Fight will cover a channel and a media outfit called Project Camelot. And a lot of the Project Camelot stuff is based around discussing alien stuff, and, you know, a lot of it is centered on, you know, this guy who's like, oh, I went to space and I befriended the, you know, the Dracos and the this and the that and the Pleiadians, and, you know, like, and a lot of it is like, okay, here are all these like fantastical cultures, and here are how they are like a flatline monolithic culture, and how all of them have this same outlook and belief on the universe. And that, you know, science fiction and, you know, the way that a lot of people, you know, who get really invested in like ufology will paint with this monolithic and like inherently racist and xenophobic lens, that it's like, oh, all of these cultures, you know, exist in this one thing. And, you know, semi recently, a pair of Knowledge Fight listeners managed to get on to Project Camelot under the guise of having like secret knowledge about Sasquatch, and did this whole thing where, like, you know, it was, these two guys were Jewish, and it became like them using like Sasquatch as a lens to talk about a diaspora people, and like be like, wow, we're not painting in a broad brush. It's like all of these different cultures, they're very different. They're very different people within these cultures. They're not monolithic, and do this whole thing. And like, I love that Star Wars has done that. You know, like, it's, if you've ever heard me say there are no heroes for the Squatch, that's where that comes from, which I sincerely would get a fucking tattoo of. But like, you know, there are no heroes for the Squatch. And I don't know that it had it not been for like a institutionalized dark side bend of like your old Dakas and your Mother Talzins, that you don't have a dubious, you know, Night Sister culture that is kind of super okay with getting into bed with the Sith if it means, you know, advancing just a little bit. Like, you know, we talk about how, you know, Talzin was playing both sides of the war. She also, like, she offered Darth Maul up to Sidious.
She offered Maul to Sidious, and then there was that time where she revived Maul, and then the Jedi came to her and she's like, hey, did you revive Maul? And she's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I think what's interesting, especially about the Night Sisters, is that, you know, we have now, you know, we have Merrin, we have a more multifaceted view of them, but it didn't start out that way. You know, back in the Clone Wars, when we were introduced to the Night Sisters in canon, you know, they were pretty much, scary dark side witches. They have creepy spells. Look at them do their creepy stuff. And I think it's a really cool example of how that tide has kind of been reversed, and we see a broader view of the Night Sisters, you know, even with Ahsoka, you know, and the fuckery that the Night Sister witches are getting up to in Ahsoka. I think it's just cool to kind of see how that's evolved into precisely what you guys were talking about, where, you know, it's not that they're inherently light side or dark side. You know, maybe, you know, you aesthetically, obviously, don't judge a book by its cover. You know, they may have crazy spells and zombies and whatnot, but, you know, they're kind of doing their thing to some extent, and it's figures like Talzin, obviously, who kind of put them in the way of the conflict. I think not because she has a darker light side allegiance so much, because clearly she doesn't have a lot of love for the Sith either. So I think it's a very good case of exactly what we're talking about with the alien race problem.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to me, especially just because, yeah, as Jarod mentioned, you know, we've been getting away from, which is good, of course, this is a racist and, you know, othering way of thinking of thinking about all these alien species as the same. And I feel like the other great example of that has been the Tuskens, where we've gotten multiple views on Tusken culture, especially in Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett.
I mean, that was just waiting to happen. That was one of the most, I mean, even exactly, you know, following the narratives of, you know, colonialization and Native Americans in the United States, in Canada, all over North America. You know, I feel like that story was just waiting to happen, you know, and it mirrors the way that they're seen in A New Hope and the prequels. Oh, they're these horrible raiders, and then you actually see, well, they're trying to defend themselves and the trains are coming through. I mean, that's a perfect example as well.
Yeah, it's a great step that Star Wars is taking. I do want to talk a little bit.
Can I say one more thing before you switch the subject? I do have to push my agenda a little bit. If we're talking about breaking down species in Star Wars and not making cultures monolithic, can we get just one badass Ithorian that's not like every Ithorian in a Star Wars screen story is just a bumbling, incompetent fool.
I have a character.
Can I do it? Can we do it?
I have a character for you. I have a character.
Yes, go.
I have a character for you, Jacob. His name is Thalbor Sheens. He's a lawyer. He's an Ithorian lawyer who's basically Saul Goodman in space. Jarod, if you want to break.
And he becomes best friends with a very queer dark Jedi and a kleptomaniac vagrant Gungan and a huggable HK assassin droid in a little series called Ionized Bastards, which you can watch on the All Remaining Systems YouTube channel. It's wonderful. And
it is fantastic. Yeah. Badass Ithorian, Thalmor Sheens, my favorite character in Ionized Bastards. Absolutely, 100%.
I'm in Ionized Bastards, and it's my girlfriend's favorite character.
is still Alden's character, who's Saul Goodman in space.
No spoilers for Ionized Bastards, but go watch Ionized Bastards.
Go watch Ionized Bastards. I'm half considering again. Will I do this? On the event that we get to the event that we get to this point in the timeline, but I want to do it in a Galaxy season of Ionized Bastards. I really do. I mean, it's gonna be in 2029, but we'll do it.
Eli, I have to know. Completely unintentional plug. You're welcome, Jarod.
Yes, no, but I want to talk about Gorgara. Which something it is something that which is something that I didn't like as that much until I came into this game. Obviously, fuck Gorgara, but that a significant part of Dathomir was going to be Cal fighting a gigantic Dathomiri bat is batshit crazy, and I love every second of it. It's so ridiculous, but it somehow works.
I'm gonna keep it 100 with you, man. I hate that fucking boss fight.
Me too.
Not on it's hard way. I don't think it's good. I think it is tedious. I think I experience more bugs playing Gorgara than I do in any other section of the game. Where I am clipping through him and somehow still getting hit. The hit box is just
It's been too
90% of
long
that
since I
cave.
played Fallen Order, so
I played it this year, and let me tell you, fuck that boss fight with my whole chest. Fuck Gorgara. I get into that cave and I just go as I hit the meditation point before the fight. It blows. I can't stand that fight. I sincerely, I think it might be the only bad boss fight in the game.
I just conceptually like it.
Conceptually, it's fun. It's out of its mind. The same way that again, like this whole game has been like, okay, it's a little bit of Tomb Raider, a little bit of Uncharted, but it's Star Wars, and then it's like, and now you're gonna fight a bat kaiju. Fuck you, like you know. There's bitches using magic and there's zombies and shit, and fuck you. Here's a kaiju bat. Fuck you.
Yeah.
It's great on paper. The boss fight itself is.
I completely understand that, but like that, there's those shots where you're literally fighting it mid-air are so ridiculous, and something I feel like that only like the Jedi series can pull off. What was I going to say? But I think, Jacob, if you have nothing else to say about Gorgara,
we can move on.
I think we need to get.
If I derailed the Gorgara talk, I apologize.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I liked it. I liked it. I thought it was fun, but I'm
glad you liked it. I'm glad that you liked it.
I'll say I will say that there is not that we can't escape this one. You might even say I'm going to cut this part out, but you might even say there's no place to hide from this one. Let's talk about Order 66. We flash back. We see Cal's Order 66 experience. Let me tell you, one of the most cinematic moments of this game, for me, is still climbing through those vents on the Venator and hearing John Williams' Order 66 music. That
shit was something else.
It was something else.
I think part of it, the reason it hits so hard, is that the game is so conservative with when it uses John Williams themes.
Yeah.
That like
That's
when
true.
you end up in the boots of little baby Cal, you are fully transported into Order 66.
Yeah,
you know, and you know, there's a lot of discourse about, you know, why are Star Wars fans so obsessed with wanting to play through Order 66 on the side of the burgeoning galactic empire? Well, I mean, people, you know, like the Operation Nightfall level and
Battlefront
2 and the Revenge of the Sith games version of it, where like on a gameplay level to be executing Order 66 is exciting because you are going head to head with just walls and walls and waves of Jedi. That in the Revenge of the Sith game, you're fighting enemies that all have lightsabers but have like a health pool of normal infantry. So like the whole game just feels like a very realistic feeling like battle with Jedi, because unlike a boss fight, they go down in like a hit or two, you know, and in Battlefront, it's really exciting because like you're just like a fucking clone, you know,
and you can then
and then you get to play as Vader and even the odds. And again, like you get that feeling of like, it is, you know, it doesn't matter how many troops you have. It is you versus a wall of Jedi.
Yeah.
But putting us in the driver's seat of that moment, like it is truly so poignant. You know, I do like a yearly replay of Fallen Order, and while I get to that section, you know, and while I'm replaying the game, because I've played it so many times, more often than not, I find myself, you know, listening to a podcast or a video essay while I'm playing, and you know, so sometimes I'll turn off whatever I'm listening to during a cutscene if it's a cutscene I really like. But for like long stretches of gameplay, like I have something else playing. Order 66 flashback is something I turn everything else off.
It demands your full
attention. It demands your full attention. It really does.
What I do like to do, just because I feel the need to take back a little bit of agency as I'm playing, there's a hallway where there's a bunch of clones shooting at you. You can deflect every single blaster bolt and kill them. So upon later replays, I just kind of get to the point where I'm like, I am not helpless. Fuck you. I am just playing along. Where it's just reasserting dominance a little bit. It's like, I know I am him, and I will not let some baby back bitch clone trooper shoot at me without recompense, at least while I can help it. But no, it's so beautifully tragic, you know, and you watch this kid who already like wasn't super confident in their abilities, like lose everything, you know, that you as the player, and, you know, us as like, you know, adults, we look at this and go, we look at this and just want to hug Cal, because it's like, oh man, this wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because and it doesn't matter like how much context we're given beforehand. Cal continually blaming himself for the death of his master. We, as the audience, are probably able to go, it's probably not that simple. It's probably not you got him killed. It's probably more than that. But when we get there and we have that moment of just going, oh man, like he was saving you. You didn't get him killed. He happily gave his life to protect you. And it's always a gut punch, you know. And the thing that I love about it is that it just so speaks for itself, you know. We're like, for lack of a better term, it's almost beyond analysis in a way, where it's like it just sings to such a beautifully tragic tune of, you know, this is what it's like, man. You know, we saw what it took for Ahsoka and Rex to make their way off of Venator. You know, I think the Jedi who were on their flagships when Order 66 came down were the ones who probably had it the worst, because there's no getting out.
Yeah.
There's no getting out. Like, you're good luck fighting your way through the ship to get to escape pods. Like, good luck getting to them. Good luck getting in one. Good luck if they're even working. Good luck
if they're operational. Yeah.
You know, because these clones, like, it's, you know, kill the Jedi at whatever cost. So, you know, most likely they just fuck it. Like, I'll happily blow this motherfucker up to take you with me. It is just so horrifying. And seeing the grief that overcomes Cal, it is so poignant, you know. And Jarod the Paul, you know, I you know, it's one of my favorite moments in Mando season 3 is the Keller and Beck stuff. And, you know, it's something I love about Jarod the Paul is that, like, obviously he's going to protect his Padawan to his dying breath, but it's the way that he's like, no, like, I'm going to fuck all of you up to keep this kid safe.
Yeah.
Like, I do not want to have to cut through this Venator like a hot knife through butter, but fuck you. Like, I will
if you try to hurt him.
Yeah. If you try to kill this, if you try to hurt this kid, I will fuck you up.
Yeah.
You know, and he's putting clones through walls and shit. Like,
there are so many great...
He's doing stuff where I'm like, can a Jedi do that? Should a Jedi be doing that? Like, when he slams the clone into the ceiling, pretty much doing the same move that Darth Vader does in Rogue One. You know, come on.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. One, the other thing that I'm going to say is what I really like about the sequence, and maybe we can exclude Clone Wars for this one specifically because it was probably developed around the same time. But what I think this sequence does really well is it sets up the modern Order 66 sequence.
Yeah.
Where before this, we hadn't had an Order 66 sequence on screen in a film or television show or a video game like this since Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
And we've gotten it so many times now, you know, with the Clone Wars, afterwards, with the Clone Wars, with the Bad Batch, with the Mandalorian, with the Book of Boba Fett, and of course with Obi-Wan Kenobi. And, like, I love how, like, specifically it like there's this way of it being like that's the stance that's being taken, that this didn't just happen to the extent that we covered on screen in Revenge of the Sith. This is happening everywhere to everyone who's involved with the Jedi. This is a momentous event in galactic history.
Yeah.
And this is something not just to be talked about once, but to be talked about over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing that I love about how many times we've seen Order 66 is none of them feel identical to each other.
No.
Like, you know, Cal's is different from Reva's, is different from Grogu's, is different from Ahsoka's. Like, they're all tragic and
from Kanan's.
different canons. Like, but the thing that I love about it is that, like, you know, for Kanan, you know, like, look at Bad Batch for Kanan. For us as the viewer, that is us getting to witness like the birth of Caleb of Kanan Jarrus. You know, like this is the beginning of the end of Caleb Doom and the beginning of Kanan Jarrus. And that, like, there's almost, I don't want to say a hopeful note, but there's a bittersweetness to it. That, like, we as the audience know, oh, this boy with a 40-year-old man's voice is going to go on and do incredible things to save this galaxy. You know, for Reva, you know, it's this, it is, you know, and I don't say this lightly, but, like, you know, there was a reason why those content warnings were slapped on Kenobi. You know, like, it is the vibe of a child helpless to save themselves, and it feels like a fucking school shooting. You know, like it feels like a terror attack. You know, in the way that Order 66 is depicted in Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, in for Grogu, it is this. It also has like a bittersweetness, but it's also like a more. It's framed as like the heroic act of his rescue. You know, by the time that we see the full breadth of what happened to him that night
with Kelleran,
you know, swooping in, that like it was all of this effort to save one child, just one. Like we can get to exactly one kid, and we're going to do everything to protect them because all we can do is save this one child. And look at all of the adults who are willing to lay down their life for them. And in the case of Cal, you get to witness this moment that is almost, it's the beginning of a therapeutic moment for him, but one that like takes a great deal of strain to begin. And there's this moment of like almost a foreboding sense of not being able to stop what's happening. You know, like I think there's a reason why I take such glee in taking back that small bit of control to like drop those couple clone troopers, that like you feel so helpless. You like, and I think it's because it is a flashback and it is a memory.
Yeah,
it's we as the audience, it is that sense of like this has happened. There's no going back. Like all you can do is relive this horrible experience.
It's this loss of innocence that's really that is just earth shattering for this young boy. And it one of the things I think it does is that it does form this modern Order 66 sequence that we're getting used to in the worst way in live action Star Wars and modern Star Wars. But now, of course, we have a good old Force vision, which with Cal and Jarod, which, by the way, can we assume that this takes place in, like, I don't know how we say it, like a dimension beyond space and time, a space between spaces, a world between worlds? I don't think that the world between worlds looks exactly the same to everybody, and I'd be willing to bet that this is what, like, the training arena is the version, at least a version of the world between worlds, or like the cosmic force in general.
Yeah, I think that, you know, the moments where the cosmic force interacts with the physical world, that it is always a manifestation of the world between worlds. That there is a like metaphysical element to it, that like all of that is the world between worlds. Like the world between worlds is the cosmic force in like where you can touch it in a weird way. So yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree with you, and I don't even think that's a hot take or controversial opinion. I think it's, was it necessarily intended that way? Maybe not, but like in the grand scheme of things, I think that anytime the cosmic force is interacting with the physical world, that is how it is happening.
And it just works really well.
Yeah. And I love the fact that it is that because Dathomir is such a nexus in the Force, that that makes it a gateway where something like that can happen, where Cal is experiencing like this moment of incredible dread, that because Dathomir is so entrenched in the power of the living force, that like it opens up this window for Jarod to kind of reach through the other side of that window and be like, hey man, stop, you know, stop, eat a sandwich. Let's talk about this. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
But like yes, my blood is on your hands, apprentice. That moment, which I know is a favorite of your co-host Connor, and I'm sure we'll talk about it with him when he comes on in a few weeks. Just like this idea that Cal is still blaming himself. You know, I think about, and it's so great fortune of us to be talking about this after Ahsoka with Shadow Warrior, because I feel like
I think it's the same thing.
Serves a very similar purpose to teach Ahsoka and Cal a lesson that they need to learn.
100%. And I do love the idea. Yeah, not only is it a lesson you need to learn, but I love this idea that it's like, I am going to start where you think you are.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you indict this thing that you hold yourself responsible for, because I want to make you see what's happening here. And I love the idea that, you know, like not only, again, when you get to Ilum is this like almost reclamation of his innocence, but also there's this sense of like, this isn't not like, it's almost like he's trying to let Cal as an adult relive that experience and be like, okay, I feel like you're old and mature enough now to recognize what actually happened here and not how you remember it, because those are two different things. And the way that like in Shadow Warrior, like Anakin from Beyond is like, okay, let's unpack where you're at now. You consider yourself to be, you know, this product of the darkest warrior in all of the history of the galaxy, and you know, you hold all this baggage for what it must mean for you to be my apprentice, and this baggage about how you think you could have stopped what I did. Okay, let's assume all of that is true. Let's run this back for now, you know, and let me put you in a situation so you now with an adult mind can re-experience what you experienced as a youth. And now start to understand that you were in a fucked up situation. You did not fuck up. You know, and I get, like you said, like it's being able to compare these moments and contrast them that I think gives a lot of credence to this idea of like, the Force is going to meet you where you're at. It's up to you to work your way through it and figure out what it's trying to tell you, that maybe you're not fully on base here. And it is just such a wonderful, beautiful moment.
It's fantastic, and the destruction of Cal's lightsaber, which of course was Jarod's, was something I also thought was incredibly beautiful, just because, like, yeah, it's the Force saying in the clearest terms possible, move the fuck on. Stop letting your trauma control you. It was terrible. It happened. It was awful what happened to you. But you need to, but in order to move forward, you need to move forward. You need to let it go. And it's such a great moment for Cal. And I think Cameron Monaghan acts the moment very well. And we get what is maybe for me one of the weirdest moments in this game ever. Cal's walking out of the temple, lightsaber broken, and he runs into that guy he ran into,
who I on first playthrough thought was Eno Cordova.
Here's the thing, I don't blame you,
because I will say, because I went to Dathomir my very first playthrough. The moment I got off Bogano, I was like, saber staff. So I hauled ass to Dathomir to get the saber staff. So when I first meet him after all of these clips of Cordova, he's like, "Hello, traveler." I'm like, "Fucking that guy."
No,
you're an old white dude with a beard. What's your deal? You know? Yeah.
It's Terran put a cowl on Malicos. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is like, so he takes off his shirt and he goes, Terran Malicos. And it's this weird moment, and and this is always a thing that I think about, which is like
I take back what I said earlier. The actual hardest boss fight in the game. Terran Malicos.
Oh yes, I agree. The weirdest thing for me is like, are we supposed to know who this guy is? The game almost acts like we're supposed to know who this guy is, or that Cal knows who this guy is. Like like there's that moment where like it's just.
But he even doesn't. There isn't like Jedi Master Terran Malicos. It's just
Yeah.
I don't have a shirt.
Yeah, and
look at my scar tattoos.
Yeah, and it was just this
headhunting
really
Zabraks.
strange moment, and especially because like, and I remember specifically this being a moment with being in Fallen Order specifically, and I've changed my tune quite a bit on this idea, but I just remember being like, another one survived, and it's not like I'm opposed to that many Jedi surviving, or 66 again, very small proportion still, but it's like, but I do remember just feeling like, so it's another Jedi who survived, but this one's evil. But not an Inquisitorius. No, he's evil by Dathomir stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just this, it's one of the strangest reveals in Star Wars. I don't necessarily even think it's bad. It's just kind of
weird.
Strange.
This is really bizarre.
It's just, but I do like as I described, the pulpy, almost soap opera-esque like dynamic between Merrin and Malicos, where there's some drama that's been going on with them for quite a while, and Malicos has been manipulating Merrin, and as she sees Terran's offer to Cal to join him, she sees that now. It's still my favorite part is that they get into an entire like civil war, and then Cal's just standing there like,
yeah.
Like Cal just happened to be at the wrong place in the wrong place at the wrong time, and his punishment is Night Sister zombies en masse.
Yeah,
and there is first of all, the Night Sister zombies were a delight to see again. I love that spooky shit. It's fun, and it's funny that we see them right after Ahsoka ends.
Yeah,
and
it's fun to do this episode right after
Ahsoka wraps up.
Amazing timing.
Complete coincidence. But just the line, and this is, again, one of my favorite lines probably in this game because of how incredibly metal it is. Like, just fucking wild it is. Your sisters are dead. Yes, their graves are all around you.
When you fight one Night Sister, you fight us all. That was the line that made me go, oh my god.
You fight us all. And it's this just like, holy shit, what the fuck is happening? Like, these Night Sisters are so incredibly not to be messed with. It's so ridiculous, but it is. Actually, my favorite reaction, honestly, of any character is Grease, because you can always trust Grease to have the best responses to this. Because Grease is just like, I don't know what the fuck is happening with this. I don't want any of it. Get these freaking zombies off my ship. There's that great shot as they leave of the Mantis flying out and like the zombies literally falling off of the ship, which is just so like incredibly, it's so goofy and so ridiculous, but it's played so seriously that you can't help but believe it.
Yeah.
And I love it so much. That pretty much is all the story of this episode. Jarod, as our guest, I'll go to you first. What did you think about this 40 minutes of Jedi Fallen Order, as if we haven't talked about it enough?
I think it's a great block. I think it's a great section for Cal's journey, because just at the moment where he's like, yeah, I'm a Jedi, motherfucker, he kind of has this rude awakening of like, no, there's more to this than that. And I think it's a rude awakening that he will experience for the next 5 years, that just because you are fighting the forces of darkness doesn't mean you are beyond learning what you need to learn. So no, I think it's a phenomenal 1-2 punch of, victorious against the Ninth Sister, but boy, do you have a lot of shit to unpack still.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, it's one of the best parts of the game. The fight with the Ninth Sister, fucking going toe to toe with Jarod the Paul in the probably world between worlds. It's phenomenal. It's great. It's amazing. It's a huge part of the amazing work of art that is Jedi Fallen Order, and it helps lay the ground thematically in so many ways for its successor.
Jacob, I'll go to you next.
I mean, I agree completely. I think it's phenomenal that we get to see Cal, in such a short span of time, go from such an epic high of, defeating the Ninth Sister, feeling like it's this major stride, seeing Seer's reaction to that information, to all of a sudden, in the tomb, all of his guilt and his doubt and his misgivings and whatever Jarod Topal may be trying to tell him, and however much of that is coming from maybe Jarod Topal's spirit, maybe his own internal voices, just seeing him be brought down in that tangle of guilt and shame and fear and uncertainty really kind of deepens the feeling that I had for him, and it deepens the empathy that the audience can have for Cal. Just like in real life, everyone's experienced this. You go from feeling like you're there to all of a sudden, being thrown into a whirlwind of doubt and questions. And I think that's just an amazing beat, and the story it's put together pretty perfectly. And then, obviously, the Terran reveal, seeing Merrin come in as well, doing her thing, and the Ninth Sister duel on top of that, and everything that entails. This is a jam-packed section, and I'm a fan of it. I'm a big fan of it.
It's one of my favorites of the game as well. The introduction of Merrin, the introduction of Dathomir, the fight with the Ninth Sister, so many highlights, so many great emotional beats, as well as just exciting action moments for this action adventure video game. And I think it was a great coincidence that Jarod got to talk with us about this one, because I think this is, again, I think it's probably the best section of the game, honestly. The final chunk that we're gonna do, we'll see how I compare it to this one. There's great stuff.
For me, I like playing the next chunk the most, because it's two great fights back to back. Again, Malicos is one of those, I just like fighting.
Three.
Oh, we're gonna call that a fight.
Which one? Which one are you talking about?
Vader.
No.
Oh, Trilla and Bogano. Yeah.
Trilla. Malicos, Trilla.
Yeah, Malicos, Trilla. I mean, they're both great. All this stuff on Fortress Inquisitorius, fighting Malicos, it's wonderful. You guys are in for a treat for the next one.
Yeah, we definitely are. I think that's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy. Next episode, we're going to be wrapping this game up. We're going to be doing the last hour of gameplay. This one's going to be an hour, because that's the remaining time we have left on this game. Bogano, Ilum, Fortress Inquisitorius. We have a lot to look forward to. But until then, first, Jarod, do you want to tell us everywhere we can find you?
Yes, you guys can find the Nerd Academy podcast, where I talk about Star Wars, comic book, movie, and TV stuff, all manner of nerdy who's a what's it on YouTube, the Nerd Academy podcast. You can search Nerd Academy podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and find the audio versions of everything we release as well. As we alluded to earlier, I'm on the Ionized Bastards, a Star Wars RPG show by Michael McCoy on the All Remaining Systems YouTube channel. It's me, Alden Diaz, Dan Miller from Broaxium, Jerry from the Bombad cast, obviously Epic Confrontations, which is here. Yeah. Check all that out. Our Patreon for the Nerd Academy. We have a Knights of the Nerd Republic Star Wars Versus series, which is coming back. Scheduling has been rough, so we're going to be getting caught up on the matches we're behind on, and finishing up what we needed to do for this month over the next 2 weeks. So if you join at the $5 tier, you'll be in for 4 total episodes over the course of a week. So stay tuned for that. We also have a show called Heroic History 101, where Travis and I, read and discuss different comic book arcs. I want to try to sneak one in for spooky season. So yeah, Nerd Academy podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for Jarod for coming on. You can, of course, find us at In a Galaxy Pod everywhere on all your socials. You can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be there. If we're not, email us, as well as any questions or trivia or anything you want to talk about on the show. swinagalaxy@gmail.com. watch Epic Confrontations. The next match is going to be this guy right here, Jarod the Dark Jedi, against some movie trivia schmodown competitor, former movie trivia schmodown competitor. Who knows who that's going to be?
I fucking don't. I can tell you that.
Yeah. No. Yes. But it is of course a consequence of him losing the Legends match to Alden Diaz. But
Just had to get that part in.
But so that's going to be exciting. That will probably be out. I think it'll actually be closer to late October, unfortunately, because of some scheduling delays. I'll tell you about it afterwards. It's not happening this weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Anyway, but yeah, and then of course we have our second match, its own faction, the Wayseeker Alliance. Their team, the Bi Republic, Bill Sheehy, Claire Stribling, against Jerry from the Wombat Cast and Andy from Force Friends Rewatch podcast. They're calling themselves Sheeves Shills. Sheeves Shills versus the Bi Republic. Those are our two matches. I'm really excited for both of them. Jared's match is done. The Bi Republic versus Sheeves Shills one is almost done, and I'm excited for both of them. But I think unless there's anything else, all there's left to say is may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.